I've cooked a lot of good food on my stove and in this oven, and you've seen my taste tests. We've had a lot of them, and they've all been good, and every single one of them has been completely honest. But I'm going to tell you that this squash casserole, good. It is the world's best squash casserole. Y'all, it's fresh squash season here in the South. If you love squash as much as my husband does, we're going to make the world's best squash casserole, and I'm going to show you how you can store it in your freezer and have it ready to go all year long. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine, and welcome to my table. This is one of my favorite things that I do because it makes life so much easier later on down the road. So let's make this squash casserole today, and if you love squash, you're going to love it too. We're going to start out today by just taking our squash and preparing it to boil for just a few minutes. So I'm just going to cut off the ends. I'll show you what I do. Just like that, a little bit off each end. And then I'm just going to slice it up. And these do not have to be perfectly even slices since we're boiling it and then making a casserole out of it. It's going to be very forgiving because it's all going to kind of get mashed up anyway. So let's just give it a few quick slices. It'll cook a little easier and boil a little more evenly if we do that. So let's prepare all of our squash. I'm going to make enough today for 2 recipes because we're going to eat one today, and then I'm going to show you how I store it for later too with the second recipe. So if you have squash in your garden, or if you like to purchase a lot of squash when it comes in fresh this time of year, you can purchase a lot, go ahead and make up several batches, and I'll show you what you can do with it. And one of the reasons I'm doing 2 batches today is not only to show you what I do, but 2 batches fits in my big pot pretty easily. So if I try to do more than that, I just have to do it in several different pots. But today we're just going to do 2 batches, and it should fill our pot just about perfectly. Now that we have our squash ready, I'm also going to take 1 onion. This is a sweet Vidalia onion. You don't have to use Vidalia, but you do want to use a sweeter onion if you can get it, like a sweet yellow onion. And I'm just going to cook this with the squash. It gives lots of good flavor. And then we're just going to give it some rough slices because there again, all of this is going to get mashed up in our casserole. So we just want it to cook a little bit, give that flavor while that squash is cooking too. And I'm just going to do some big slices, and then I'll go back and give them a few rough chops. You don't have to necessarily dice your onion for this into small pieces you would normally do. I'm just going to kind of do that, and then a couple this way, and it's going to separate good enough to cook throughout our squash. Gather it all up and just spread it around the pan. Now, we're just going to add water to our pan, almost covering the squash. We want to boil it, so we want it mostly covered. It will cook down a little bit, so if your water doesn't quite come over the top, it'll be okay. And I am going to do one other thing at this point. I'm going to go ahead and add a little salt to the pot. And I'm just going to sprinkle, you do it to taste. This is a big pot, so I'm giving it 2 or 3 good sprinkles across because we want lots of good flavor in this casserole. And then we're just going to put it on our eye, turn it on about medium to medium high, bring it to a boil, and let it boil for probably about 10 to 12 minutes. Our squash went ahead and cooked for about 12 minutes. You want to let it come to the boil first and then start timing it. So ours boiled for about 12 minutes, and it's completely ready. And if you want to do a test on it, just take a knife or a fork or something and just see how easy that cuts through. That's about what you want. This has actually been sitting for just a little while. It's still very warm. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to drain it, and then we're going to put our casserole together. I just use my lid to drain it. And let that water come out the side, because I'm actually going to mix my casserole up in this pan. It's already dirty. It's as big as my mixing bowl. And so that's what we're going to do. All right, that looks pretty good. So remember, this is about 2 recipes worth of squash casserole. It has cooked down in our pot, so hopefully I can get all these ingredients in it. I didn't mention it, but you may have noticed I used about 4 squash for each recipe. Depending on the size of your squash, you'll need 3 to 4. If they're a little bit bigger, just use 3. So I used 3 to 4 squash per recipe, and then my onion was very large, so it was enough for both recipes. If you have a smaller onion, it would do for 1 recipe. Okay, now we're just going to start adding our ingredients. We want 2 cups of cheese per recipe. So I'm going to add enough for 2 recipes. And then we're going to add some sour cream. You want about 1 cup per recipe. So I'm going to kind of eyeball this. And we're going to do about 2 cups. And that should be about 2/3 of this container based on the ounces. It's a 24-ounce container, so you want about 16 ounces for 2 cups. So that should be good for that. One other ingredient that I did not have in the initial picture was cream of chicken soup. You can absolutely use canned cream of chicken soup. In fact, that's all I've ever used in this recipe prior to today, and it is delicious. It holds up to its name, the world's best squash casserole. But I have a new recipe that I came up with recently for my own homemade cream of chicken soup. So that's what I'm going to use in it today. You want 1 can per recipe. So this is the equivalent of 2 cans. I'm going to link this for you if you want to try this cream of chicken soup to make it homemade yourself. So we're just going to pour that in there. And let me tell you what, guys, this soup is delicious. It is better than what you get in the can. So if you have just a few minutes, you can make this. In fact, I made it while my squash and onions were cooking, and it was completely finished before the squash and onions were, so that was great. We're getting a sink full of dishes now, aren't we? And then our final ingredient for the squash casserole, and I think this is the secret ingredient, because we have added flavor at every level of this recipe. We started out with salting the squash and adding the onions, and that brings a lot of flavor to the base. And then the things that we've added have a lot of flavor. This cream of chicken soup has flavor as well. The cheese is going to add a lot. But you want to get the chicken flavor of the dressing, the stovetop stuffing mix. And you want 1 bag per recipe. So we're going to add 2 bags today. And this is going to be a full pot. We're going to have to stir carefully. I think we can do it, though. I'm just going to kind of start by poking this dressing down into the pot to get some of the mixture incorporated into the other ingredients first. Then we can start stirring pretty well. And you can see why for this casserole, you didn't have to be extremely careful about how you cut your squash or how you cut your onions, because it's all kind of getting mashed up together. And you're not going to have any big chunks of either one. So it's going to be perfect. Y'all, this smells so good. And can I just tell you, full disclosure, I am not a huge squash fan. My husband loves it. Absolutely loves it. And that's why I found this recipe. But I actually am not a huge squash fan, but I do love this recipe. It is so good with all those other flavors. I really like it this way. Okay, this is looking about the way we want it to, all mixed well. I just want to be sure everything's got a little bit of everything in it, every bite. So now I've got my casserole dish here, and I'm going to spray it well. And we'll go ahead and put casserole in that we're going to eat today. So I'll put about half of it in that, and then I'm going to show you what I do with the rest of it. Okay, so there's our casserole dish full. This casserole is almost as big as a 9 by 13. It's not quite as big. You could put it in a smaller dish if it's taller and just have a thicker casserole, but this dish works pretty well, or a 9 by 13 would be fine. Then the way I like to top it before we bake it is with just some buttery crackers. These are the Ritz crackers. You can use a different kind of cracker if you have it. It'll be fine. You just want a little something crunchy. You could just top it with a little extra cheese if you prefer. You could just bake it the way it is, and it's delicious if you don't want to put any topping on it at all. But the recipe calls for these crackers, and so that's the way I'm going to do it and show you today. I don't know how y'all break up your crackers, but I like to use my hands. I know it gets messy, but I feel like I just got better control over the consistency of the size cracker crumbs we get here. So I'm just going to use one sleeve for this recipe. If you wanted to go ahead and melt, 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter and mix with your crackers before you spread them on top, you can do that. I typically just slice a few butter pats and lay around the top and let it bake like that, and it does just fine. So let this butter sit out a little too long. It's not super cold. It's a little harder to handle, but that's okay. We can work with it. That'll be good. Okay, and so that's going to give some of that rich, buttery goodness with a little bit of crunch on top. So we're going to bake it, and then we'll give it the taste test, and you'll get to see how it is. Let me show you what we're going to do with the rest of our squash casserole. What I like to do is just take the quart-size Ziploc bags, because you can fit enough in this for a good-sized casserole. Probably what is left in here is going to fill 2 bags. So if you wanted to get a smaller portion out, that would make it perfect to have it in a quart-size bag. And if you need a bigger one, just get 2 bags. I always label it so that I don't forget what it is. I just label it with the name of what it is and then the date that I do it, the month and the year. So let me label another bag. And when I look in my freezer and want an easy side dish ready to go, this will be perfect. Okay. I'm going to open both of these. And then I like to kind of just turn the top edge of the bag down. It makes it hold a little bit better. And plus it makes it where you don't drip on the outside so much. Helps it all stay on the inside of the bag if it's dripping. Ooh, you can already see that cheesy goodness inside that casserole. It's going to be delicious. Okay, let's swap bags. And then we'll kind of even it up at the end as needed. And y'all, this is an easy way to have things done ahead. Even if you don't have time to do a lot of canning or to do a lot of freezer prep, if you can just double a recipe when you're making it and then put one of the servings into the freezer for later, it just makes life easier down the road. So I love doing that. And especially when the squash is fresh. I do that with my corn. I do try to put up enough corn for all year long. I don't always do that much squash, but I do like to have a few bags. So this time I doubled it, and I'll get a couple bags, and I might do that again once or twice before squash season is over. And I'll be so glad later that I did that. And it didn't really take a lot of extra time because I was already going to make squash casserole. Then, just turn our bags back up. And you don't want to fill these while your squash is too hot. It's still a little bit warm. And so I'm going to leave them open for just a few more minutes, let them cool down before I seal them completely. But then let me show you what I'll do. I'll seal it and get as much air out as I can. And then I like to lay mine flat so that they can kind of just stack up as I get them done. So that's kind of how I do it. I'm going to open this back up and just let it cool a little more. That is how you can have squash casserole in your freezer for a super easy side dish later. That will be delicious, just like you made it fresh. I've baked the squash casserole at 350 degrees for about 40 minutes. Do yours for 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how your oven bakes, but 40 minutes has been just perfect. Let's get it out. Smells so good and looks just great. Ooh, that is going to be delicious. I can tell you that. Let's get a little bowl, let it cool just a minute, and give it the taste test. Ooh. Can you just see all that flavor in there? It's really steaming hot. Let's give it just a minute. Okay, let's taste it. Okay. Let me just stop right here and tell you that if anybody else tells you that they have the world's best squash recipe, do not believe them unless it is this recipe. This recipe is so good, and I kid you not, I told you I'm not a squash fan, but this is delicious. You're going to have to make it for your family. It's just yummy. So, so good. Well, that's a wrap for Mary Catherine's Table today. I'm so glad that you were with us. I really think you're going to like this recipe. You just got to make it for your family. I love these tips where we can do something ahead of time, mess up our kitchen once, but have multiple meals that we can use it at. So I love that tip about putting it in the freezer, and I've already got my bags in my freezer now, so I can have squash casserole later. All I've got to do is pull it out of the freezer, let it thaw, put it in my casserole dish, and then if I want to put the topping on, do it at that point and bake it. It's so easy later down the road. So I hope that's a helpful tip to you too. So if you like that kind of thing, be sure to hit the subscribe button, share us with your friends, check out our website at marycatherinestable.com, and remember to go out and find someone today who needs a little bit of kindness and give them some of yours.